So design, build, landscape maintenance, snow, all these sort of parts of our business require a little bit different approach on sales. And as I kind of talk about sales, I'll try to touch on all three. But I think often, we start these businesses. If you're like me, I started in a 600 square foot apartment. I had a little crawl space under my front porch and no working capital. It was a rough way to start. But, my initial sort of view on sales was, the phone rings, that's a lead. I'm going to go see that person, find out what they want, and I'm going to give them a price. And it seems simple, and I think it is, but over time, as you start doing more complicated work and you start hiring people and other people are kind of handling that process, it becomes a lot more complicated than it probably needs to be. I think sometimes we overcomplicate some of these simple processes in our business. So we're just going to kind of talk about a sales process that's going to help you close more business. Obviously you're going to have to customize things to suit your own business, your market, the type of customers. But as I go, I'm going to try to keep things high enough level to allow you to kind of put that information in play in your own business. So before we start coming up with a sales process, we have to know what the revenue target is for the year. Obviously, if you're already using LMN, you're operating your business using a budget. This is the first budget that we ask you to complete. And I've always said when I've taught workshops, it's amazing with a room full of new people in a workshop, everybody knows their sales from the previous year. Everybody always knows what they sold, but they don't know how much it cost them to complete that work, which means they really don't know whether or not they're profitable. They don't know what they're spending on labor, material, equipment, subcontracting, don't know what they spent on overhead, so they don't really know what's left at the end of the day. And I think when we start to develop a sales process, it has to start with understanding what our revenue target is for the year so that we can then create a process that's going to help us achieve that revenue goal. So if you don't have a sales process that's documented, that's fine. Start with your revenue target. How much revenue are you going to create? How much of that needs to be new business? How much of it's existing? Have a close look at your job costs. Understand what work you've been doing in the past is profitable and what work isn't, because that's going to have a big impact on your sales process as well. So we want to know what type of work we're selling, exactly what type of work. Is it residential, commercial? Are we doing irrigation? Are we doing snow? Are we doing design build? Are we doing maintenance with lawn combined, like we just sort of heard? There's so many different ways to make money in the landscape business. Our sales process needs to identify really clearly exactly how we're going to kind of do it. So what we want is a step-by-step process that allows us to stay on track and kind of keep us accountable to running our business in the way that we set out to run it at the start of the year. Because if you're like me, when I see a big opportunity, I kind of run toward it. And that's hurt me a lot over the years in my business. I think when you have a really strong process that you hold yourself and your team accountable to, the results will always be more repeatable, and it's always going to be a lot easier to kind of stay on track if you have that sort of focus and that understanding of what your business is setting out to achieve. The sales process is kind of a key component, because what work you end up getting and how profitable that work is relies on the way you sell it. It's kind of the first step in running a successful business. But for some reason, and maybe it's just the way that most of us enter the industry, we kind of think of sales as just something that we have to do. But the reality is, the opportunity to make profit and succeed and attract those great employees and get those great jobs all starts with a fantastic sales process that really differentiates you from the rest of the industry. So these components, for me, include the step-by-step process and a funnel that just kind of explains how we're going to take people from lead through to a paid customer. And then we need to have contracts that allow us to create reoccurring revenue or profitable revenue in our business so that things get easier over the years rather than getting harder. We need a contract that's going to allow us to continuously increase the price over time. We can't go 10 years without raising our prices because we don't go 10 years without seeing increases in our operating expenses, right? So we have to kind of craft a process that's going to deliver consistent profit over the life of our company. And I think that sales process is one of those key things that you have to have in place in order for this to all come together. So a sales funnel is going to uncover a few things. It's going to identify the stages, the marketing results, how our marketing's performing. Lots of contractors say, well, I don't do any marketing. I used to say that. I said that for years. I just work on referral. The reality is you have to do some marketing. You may not call it marketing, but you're doing some marketing, and you need to know where your results are coming from. Where is the business coming from? We want to understand what our sales pipeline looks like so that we can really keep that schedule full. We don't want to overpromise. We don't want to get too backed up. We don't want delays. We don't want to overwork the staff. We want everything to be just right. In order to be efficient and have the flow in our businesses, we need to make sure that everything is just running at a steady pace. Whether it's the busy season, the slow season, the off season, we need it to be steady. And the sales process will help you get there. So we all have leads that come into our business. We qualify them. I think everybody qualifies them a little bit differently. Most of us are probably at the point where, you're qualifying people over the phone. Show of hands, how many people here are qualifying over the phone? If you're not, you should be. Because if you run out and meet with every client that requests a meeting, you're wasting a lot of time. Back to my front porch in a pickup truck, if the phone rang, I was going to go meet them because it was potential revenue. And I think that's how we start. But over time, as you start to kind of hone in on your process, your qualification process is what's going to really deliver the type of work that you want to really get. When you're qualifying people, you're qualifying them to make sure that they're asking for what you're selling. You have to know what you're selling or what you want to do in order to get good at qualifying people. Once you get really good at qualifying people over the phone, you can spend a lot less time selling. People often said to me, wait a minute, you're telling me you personally sell $40 million worth of work a year? And I would say, yes, I do, and I manage it. And people would say, well, how? And I would say, I don't do a lot of sales calls. Very few sales calls. 1, 2, 3 a week. That's it. But we qualify the heck out of them over the phone. The website qualifies them. We don't go and meet with every potential customer. When the phone rings, we qualify them and we make sure that they're buying what we're selling. And I didn't need a lot of leads to turn into customers in order to meet my sales goal. Because over the years, as I developed the business, what I always wanted to do is work for fewer people. So I wanted a small list of contracts with really big revenue. It's just easier to manage. We don't need all kinds of middle management when there's fewer customers to deal with. It's a lot easier to sell when you've got those type of customers as well because it becomes more reoccurring. It becomes easier than always chasing new business. Sales never ends. You're always trying to pick up new business if you're growing. But at the end of the day, I think it just becomes a lot easier when you're qualifying them and only going out to meet with your target customers. Once you get these people in, you're going to do some other things. You're going to do some fact finding. You're going to educate them. You're going to give them a quote. You're going to eventually write a contract and negotiate that contract. You're going to look at executing the work in the most efficient way so that you can make some money. And really, this is what we do. So in my mind, having a funnel that just kind of explains everything from the lead right on through to the profit is pretty important. We need to have a system for each stage of this funnel to make sure that we're as good as we can be at every stage so that the profit at the end of the day is also as good as can be. Because if we screw anything up on any of these steps, we don't make money. Lots of companies don't do well at qualifying leads, so they run all over town doing the wrong work. That will never be profitable. Lots of companies make mistakes by not quoting the work right, so they work all year for free. And then I think lots of companies screw up in the contract and negotiation phase, which makes them kind of chase their tail and always look for new work. The combination, getting this combination right has a huge impact on the profitability of your company. If you don't do everything right in this sort of funnel or this process, you're probably working against yourself. So look at the stages of this funnel in your company and think about where there's room for improvements. I think there's always room. It never ends. I think we can always get a little bit better and keep tweaking things. So it kind of starts out for most of us with finding these great clients. Who are our best leads? What do they actually look like? What are the characteristics of a great lead? What type of work do we want to sell? Where are they located? What's most profitable for us? What do we have room for? If we're sold out for 2 years on swimming pools, then we might have to sell something else if we want to continue to grow sales, or we may have to scale up a different division or scale up that division. But we need to identify what the best leads are in our business at any given time. If we're going to kind of grow our snow and maintenance division, we're going to look at contracts that have snow as part of the component. We're not going to take maintenance only. We want snow and maintenance. Those are kind of decisions that the process is going to kind of make clear. So if you have salespeople, when you send those salespeople out, or if you're the salesperson, you know instinctively what you're looking for because the process tells you. So you don't just accidentally sell things. You're selling work that's going to deliver profit, that's going to feed your budget and help you get that profit at the end of the year that you're looking for. How we get the leads, I mean, there's so many different ways to get leads. I think myself, creating relationships worked best, whether it was, as Jason said earlier, architects, builders, designers, decorators. Those relationships, a handful of those, will allow you to grow your business exponentially. When you want to target one of those people, you have to put some work into those relationships. You can't expect them to pick up the phone and call you. Sometimes you have to reach out to them. If there's an architect or a home builder or a decorator or a landscape architecture firm that you want to work with, you have to make that cold call. It's uncomfortable. Not many people like doing cold calls. I hate it. I can't stand talking to somebody that I don't know over the phone, asking them for a meeting to sell them something. It's just an uncomfortable conversation for me. Some people are really good at it. How many people in the room like cold calling? 1, 2, 3. 3 out of 250? Not many. So we don't do it. And I think when we don't do it, we kind of miss out on creating these fantastic relationships. I know myself, probably the best relationships that I ever created were by kind of getting outside of that comfort zone, reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, I really admire your work. I'd love to meet up for a coffee or lunch sometime. Would you be willing to do that? And those relationships often led to the most business. Probably my single biggest revenue generator was a landscape architect that I didn't work with at all for my first 10 years in business. But after reaching out, just doing what I just said, getting one small job, which led to a bigger, and a bigger, it turned into a relationship that was feeding us $20 million a year in design build, just from a phone call. The cost of acquisition on a customer like that is pretty damn cheap when all I did was pick up the phone and go for lunch one day. You make those relationships over a long period of time, but they start by just kind of reaching out and creating that relationship for the first time. Things like invites to events and sports tickets, these things are all going to strengthen these relationships for sure. Google ads are good if you're selling, lawn care and things like that, but they're not going to work well for design build contracts of $100,000 projects. You have to kind of understand where your leads are coming from. Google works well for sure in certain scenarios. I would say having a website that really shows what you can do is going to have the biggest impact on your business. It's the first point of contact these days. Even when you get a referral from a customer, they don't just phone you anymore. When you get a referral from a customer, their friend will Google you first, have a look at your website, then decide to call. If your website isn't great, they're probably going to bounce around while they're on the internet and find one that is. So your website, I can't say enough of how important this is as part of your process to have a website that shows your portfolio off and really differentiates you from the rest of the industry. Social media is working really well for a lot of people. I know swimming pool builders, backyards, paid social media posts, sharing the story of one of your projects. This is working really well. I've got some customers of LMN that have shared stories of spending $15,000 a year and driving $15 million worth of business. So certainly look at how that could work for you. Showing your work and showing it to the right audience in the right area for such a small amount of money. That's less money than you'd spend doing a home show, but you're getting the right clientele. And then, of course, just day-to-day networking. But in the end, once we find these great customers, they drop into a sales process that has to deliver these really repeatable results. We need to close the work, and we need to close the best work. So if we've taken the time to qualify them, we want to make sure that we now price the jobs in a way where we're going to make profit, the customer's going to be happy, and at the end of the day, we can share the expectations with the crew so that they can self-manage. And that's really why LMN is built the way it's built. We quote using a labor, material, equipment, and subcontracting model for a reason. It's great to break it into templates and square foot calculators and whatnot, but at the end of the day, what we really want is we want key performance indicators so that we can give people metrics and let them go out and do the work as profitably as possible so that we can reward them and so that our companies can also maintain the profitability. It's a key component of your process. The way you price the work has a ton of impact on whether or not you're going to sell the work and then obviously whether or not you're going to make profit. The way you price the work will have a huge impact. Again, I can't say this enough, on whether or not you'll sell the job. The way you present it, how you price it, and I don't mean just cheapest price, I don't mean the most expensive, I mean the way you present it and the number of options that you provide customers during that sort of buying decision process. When we quote this way, we can eliminate waste because we know exactly what labor, material, and equipment's required for the jobs. We're going to be more efficient in the way we operate. Our job costing becomes efficient, becomes accurate, so that in the future we can quote knowing exactly what things cost us rather than guessing. And it gives us these bidding metrics that allow us to quote fast in the future. So as you start to bid more, you get smarter, you get faster, you get more agile. It becomes a lot easier to grow your business. And last, but certainly not least, when you bid this way, you can start to quote projects in a time and material format. The most profitable work that you will ever find will be time and material projects. The big jobs often are time and material. When somebody hires a home builder to build a $5 or $8 or $10 million home, guess what? They always pay time and material or a cost plus arrangement. That's the way it goes. Nobody quotes that job. Nobody says it's $8 million for your house. It doesn't work that way. So those type of customers are primed to work on a time and material contract. So when you bid this way, you can create a project budget and share that budget transparently with all of your rates and details, and then explain to the customer that this is just the budget. We're going to bill you bi-weekly throughout the course of the project, and you could put a guarantee on it if you want, but in most cases, customers don't expect that. You're just budgeting to show them what the project's going to cost, but you can bill them every other week in accordance with that budget and drive a lot more profit. Your waste becomes their cost rather than the opposite, because we all have waste in our businesses. When the flow stops, you're still billing. When the flow stops on a flat rate contract, you're still paying your staff and things aren't getting done. So it kind of changes the dynamic of the relationship. Customers make decisions faster. They're a little less fussy. They're a lot easier to work with, and those bigger projects often, there's design work happening as the projects unfold. So I've always kind of liked to coach people to keep time and material as a key component of your sales process, because that's how the big jobs go. So if you're looking to do bigger design build jobs or even bigger maintenance jobs, quite often time and materials the way that people pay for that work. So ask yourself, do you have a sales process? I think sometimes people think they have a process, but I always say, if you have a process, can you write it down in 30 seconds? Can you say it right now in less than a minute? Most people can't. And if you can't really kind of share that sales process super quickly at a high level, then you probably don't really have a repeatable process. You just think you have a way of selling. But the reality is you should be able to kind of share that process quickly, whether it's for snow or maintenance or design build or irrigation. You should be able to kind of share that process very quickly. And one other big question I always try to ask people is, are you sure you're really communicating value? Often in workshops over the years, I've had people say, you know, I get what you're saying. I'm not making money because my revenue is not quite high enough for my overhead or my expenses, but where am I going to get this extra work? I get a lot of people ask that, which I always find shocking. And when I ask why, they say, well, the other people in the market are too cheap, or I can't grow my business because of my staff. There's always a reason. But it's funny, in the same room, there's always really successful people who are growing the business despite the local economy or the economy at large or the staffing issues that we all face. The reality is I always say, do you have a sales process? And are you really communicating value to the customer? Sometimes people say, well, what do you mean communicating value? And I say, well, if you were looking for a landscaper, let's just pretend you're not a landscaper for a minute. This is a hard thing to do, by the way. I've done this for years in my own business. Close your eyes for a minute and imagine you're online looking for a landscaper, and you want the best landscaper you can find because you want your backyard to be nicer than anyone else's on the street. When they log on to your website, does your website convey that? Do you have the best looking projects on your website? Do you have what you're selling? Every time I asked myself that question, I'd look and I wasn't happy. It takes years to develop a portfolio. So you can't just go from the $2,000 job to the $2 million job overnight. You got to work to get there. And that means your portfolio has to constantly improve. So taking pictures, hiring a professional, getting a pro to build your website. All of these things are super important, but then how you communicate that value beyond a website is kind of the next step, because having a great portfolio will get you the leads, but closing deals doesn't just come from a good website. There's more to it. You can't just sell people on the fact that you've got the nicest website. And that's really, I think, where the sales process gets a little deeper. The typical flow, as I said, I started out by saying my phone would ring. That's a lead. I don't think I called them a lead when I first started, but the phone would ring. I think I called them customers. Leads become opportunities. I'm going to go meet this person because I've qualified them. I'm going to go out there and see if I can sell them something. And eventually they become a client. So this is the typical flow, but ask yourself how well this flow works in your business. Are you as good as you can be at taking a lead who phones your office and turning it into profit? Because that's what the process is meant to do. If you don't really have that dialed in, then you're probably not as profitable as you should be, and you're probably not having as much fun along the way as you could. Why should a client choose you? This is a big question. I've always asked myself this over the years, whether I was selling landscaping or selling software or selling somebody a piece of land, whatever it was, I would always say, why should a client choose me? What's going to be different about working with me? So over the years in my landscape business, I put a lot of effort into kind of understanding what was going to make me unique. And this word came up quite a bit already today. And if you kind of Google unique or look it up in the dictionary for anybody that's not a millennial, we call ourselves unique, but unique really is like one of a kind. I don't know about being a one-of-a-kind landscape company. I don't know if I'm really one of a kind. There's nothing that I was doing that was really, truly one of a kind. So I don't know about unique. I kind of question whether or not my landscape company is actually unique. When you look at your competitors' websites, you'll see things like this. They're either saying they're bigger or smaller, or they're more personal, or they've got the biggest fleet. They've got best-in-class service. This is all over everybody's website. How does everybody have best-in-class service? That's kind of questionable. Fastest response time, 24/7. Higher quality, cheapest, cheaper, best price, best value. I don't think these are really all that unique. They're really just kind of statements that I think marketers like to throw on our website or our customer-facing marketing materials. At the end of the day, I think it's really hard to be unique. I think, at best, I might just kind of aim to be uncommon. If I'm uncommon, then the customer might want to give me a chance. And that's not always easy to come off as being uncommon. If they call 3 contractors and all 3 come through the door, you need to do something in that meeting that's uncommon. You need to handle them differently. And I think that's where the sales process takes over, whether it's a design build residential customer or a huge HOA maintenance contract or an area maintenance contract for dozens of stores. Whatever you're selling, something has to be really uncommon in the way you approach that deal over your competitors if you want to get the job. And that uncommon piece shouldn't just be price. If you're just going to try to be uncommon based on price, I don't think you're going to be the success that you're looking to be in the industry. So how do we do this? Sales differentiation kind of starts by doing a few things differently in your sales meeting. First off, ask and listen. I think sometimes salespeople get excited and want to tell everything about them before they hear what the customer is asking for. Everybody here knows that you should ask before you sort of speak in a sales meeting, but maybe your staff don't. Maybe your other salespeople don't really understand this. If you're not doing some role playing at the office where you're the customer and acting the part, start trying that out. See what their answers are. In other words, Sit down at your boardroom table or your dining room table, wherever you decide to work from. The local coffee shop or restaurant will work too, but be the customer. Ask the questions that the customer would ask. See what your salespeople will say. It's shocking how far off the mark they are when you do that exercise. Shocking. Most salespeople aren't very well trained. They just go out and start selling, us included. I look back at the way I sold my work in my earlier years versus what I'd learned over my 20-year career in landscaping. It was very different, the way I was selling off the start to the way I was selling later in my career. A few things that are kind of key. I want to research my customer. I've taken the time over the phone now. I've decided that they're worth meeting with. Now I want to do a little research, particularly if it's a big maintenance contract. You need to know what that company is all about. You need to understand their operation. If they're a parts manufacturing facility, read up on their company, understand what they do. Make sure that you're aware of what that customer is looking for. If it's a design build job, stalk them out a little bit on Google or LinkedIn and find out who they are, what they do. Make sure that you understand what makes them tick. If they're an engineer, they probably look at life a little bit differently than if they're a finance guy. There's some differences in the way you talk to people. So knowing who you're going to meet with has a lot to do with how you're going to sell. Create some personas. What do these customers look like? What customers are you looking to sell? And what do they look like? How are we going to sell to these different customers? If they're calling for a lawn care package, what's the sales process look like for that lawn care package versus somebody who's calling for an irrigation or lighting install versus someone who wants a backyard swimming pool? The process kind of changes a little bit on each. If you're calling somebody for a lawn care quote, you probably don't want a one-on-one meeting this day and age. You want them to quote it over the phone. You want them to Google measure your property and give you a quote within 10 minutes by email. That's how you sell lawn care. Not saying, okay, well, I'll come over and talk to you about every last detail of your lawn. People don't have the time for that anymore, right? So the process has to change based on what you're selling. When you do get a chance to speak to the customer, you've got to do some things different. You've got to ask some questions. You need to understand their previous experience. And more than anything, I think we want to know, once we've had some time with the customer, what the winner is going to look like. What is it that is going to make this customer buy? And if we start talking first, there's no chance that we're going to find out this information. Because when you start talking first, you're going to say something wrong. You need them to talk first. You need to understand exactly what makes them tick, what's going to make that decision. And that takes some time to get out of people. You can't rush a sales meeting. But tell your story. Once they've kind of explained what they want, tell your story. We want to kind of create an uncommon image around your process. I think kind of forget about being unique. You're not going to be the one and only landscaper that does a nice backyard swimming pool. But your process is going to be uncommon. You're going to do things differently. You're going to get that confidence that you need for you to stand out based on your portfolio, your process, your approach, the way you handle them in the meeting. And more than anything, I think the way you kind of teach them and get the confidence in showing them that you're the expert that's there to help bring their need to a close. Whether they're building a backyard pool or maintaining their property or having their snow plowed, you're the expert that's going to help them kind of get from having a problem to having a solution to having the execution done in the easiest way possible. Just making life easy for that customer will make you uncommon. So the typical sales meeting, I think, kind of goes like this. Whether you're buying a car or buying a house or meeting somebody to get a new roof put on your home, There's this basic sort of process that happens. We're all used to this. We introduce ourselves, we do some fact finding, and then you get a sales pitch. It kind of goes like this, and so customers are used to this. We're all used to it. You're almost kind of standing there tapping your toe, waiting for the sales pitch. And let's face it, it's annoying, right? Nobody likes to be sold. It gets frustrating after a while. So I think this uncommon approach, although it may seem simple, is not that common, and it should be. First off, we want to do some fact finding. We want to understand exactly what the customer's needs and wants are. We need to understand what makes that customer tick. What's their problem? What is it that they're trying to solve? We want to understand the history. If it's a maintenance contract, why are you getting rid of your last contractor? What went wrong? Ask those questions. Don't be shy. We'll never be able to fix their problem if we don't know what's wrong. People don't phone landscapers for no reason at all. You're there to solve a problem or to deliver on a need or a want that they have in their home or business. So we need to get the history. We want to understand why they're hiring a contractor. We want to know what went wrong if there was a failed relationship. We want to understand the decision-making process, including who's going to make the buying decision. Who is going to make the buying decision? That's super important. When you go out to sell a $100,000 backyard, you can't go and meet just with the husband. That's crazy. He's not the decision maker, right? So make sure if you're going to go out and do a sales meeting for a backyard pool that you meet with both. You have to meet with both sides of the equation. Both partners need to be there on a residential project for a reason, because both people live there. Both people are going to have input into what they want. And in the end, if you only speak to one, the other person is going to resent you as a contractor for it, so you won't close that deal. You have to have both people at the table if it's a real big job. Different if it's a commodity. If you're out paving asphalt driveways, you don't need to meet with both. But if you're going to put a backyard swimming pool in that's going to cost them $100,000, you have to have both people at the table. Everybody has to have some input. Otherwise, you're set up to fail. So your process needs to deliver that. During that booking of the sales meeting, you have to share that type of information. You have to say confidently, I'm going to need both partners to be at the table. And when I get to your home, I really need to sit down at the kitchen table with you for the first half an hour, because I've got some sort of information gathering that I need to do before we go out in your backyard and have a look at the specifics. And just by doing that on your process, just by saying that, you've set the stage for success. Why would I want to have that meeting at the kitchen table? It's really quite simple. When I pull up to the job and it's a design build, my process is this. I park on the street. The first thing I do is I check out the house. How's it maintained? What does their garage door, their roofing materials, their front door, what kind of car do they drive? My process, I'm collecting from the time I roll up. I need to know all this stuff to understand the type of people I'm selling to. Why do I want to meet at the kitchen table instead of out in the backyard? It's obvious, right? I just want to walk from the front door to the kitchen table. I want to see if they're neat and tidy. I want to see their furniture. I want to see their art. I want to see their flooring, their kitchen. I just want to know what their taste is. Because now, when I do get out in the backyard, my suggestions and conversation are aligned with them. I don't know if they're into modern, transitional, super traditional, colorful, monotone. I have no idea what they like until I get in the house. Once I'm in the house, I know everything I need to know. Now I can go out in the backyard, ask more questions, and then when I start to speak, I'm aligned with them. I know what they're looking for. So your process has to be directly in line with gathering information so that you can then deliver and educate and sell from an uncommon position. They feel like they know you once you know them. But if you just met in the backyard, you'd never know them. I'm going to share my process with them. I'm going to make sure they understand exactly what doing business with my company looks like. I want to make sure that they can see the knowledge that exists. I'm going to talk a little bit of technical now and then. Once we get out in the backyard, I might point out some drainage issues and point out a couple little things. I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole, but I want them to kind of get that confidence that they need in the sales process. So I'm just educating. I'm going to show off the portfolio. I'm going to make sure that my portfolio is uncommon, that it's better than everybody else's. And sometimes when I say this, contractors will say, but mine isn't yet. And if it isn't, then you're probably selling too far up the chain. Your portfolio should be better than the competitors that you're up against for that specific job. In other words, if you don't build $300,000 backyards yet, then you're going to have a hard time getting there on your first one. But if you partnered up with a swimming pool company who has that portfolio, and then if you had a nice portfolio of your projects and together you sat down or you showed their pools as part of your sales presentation and you share that with the customer, now you've kind of stepped yourself up to a next level. Your portfolio needs to be better than whoever's coming through the door for the same job though. So make sure that when you're selling, your portfolio is ready to sell that type of work. And in the end, really what we're trying to do here is get confidence in the sales meeting in the result. So again, whether it's design build or we're selling somebody a large scale maintenance contract on an HOA, we have to get those buyers to believe that we can deliver the result to fulfill their need. We want to make it as easy as possible to move forward. So in this meeting, we're sharing with them what it's going to take for us to get the work done, but we're always making it appear as though we're going to take care of everything. If as soon as you put some work back on them, you're kind of emptying their tank a little bit, right? If they kind of pulled up to the meeting with a full tank and you start asking them to do things, each time you tell them that they have to do something or there's a step, you're emptying their tank a little bit, and before you know it, the conversation's over. You should leave that meeting with them believing that they don't have to do anything, that you're going to take care of everything. At the very most, we might want them to move their car out of the driveway when we get started. That's the kind of conversation that I want to have with the customer. I want them to believe that we're going to take care of everything, and then we have to have a process that allows us to do that. Building loyalty kind of comes next. When you sell this way, there is no sales pitch. All you did was educate. For me, that's a lot more natural way to sell than to put a sales pitch on somebody. Those of you who are LMN customers, you probably noticed that because you may have went to a workshop to find out about the software. Because for me, my personal style has always been teach somebody, and if they like what they see, they might want to do business with us. It's just an easier way to do business. So during your sales process, you need to do the same. You need to teach the customer what it's going to take to deliver the results that they're looking for. That starts with getting enough confidence in them for them to share a budget. Now, how many people here can just say to the customer, "What's your budget?" and they shout it out? Put up your hands if anybody has that kind of process built into the sales. It doesn't work, right? What's your budget? The customer says, "Well, I don't know. I have no idea." And, you know, they're not lying. They really don't. Think about it for a minute. When you walk into a car dealership and you look at a brand new pickup truck, you kind of already know the price because you looked online. But people can't do that with landscaping. You can't just Google up a backyard and say, "What does a backyard cost?" So they don't know the budget. This is a huge opportunity for us in the landscape business. They've phoned you up to spend 5, 10, 15, or hundreds of thousands of dollars on some landscaping, and they don't have a budget. That's kind of a neat opportunity. I've always seen that as an opportunity. I'm going to help them develop a budget. I'm going to sit down as the expert. I'm going to find out what they want, and while I'm there on the spot, I'm going to loosely create a budget, very loose. If I sit down and it's that backyard pool and left the kitchen table after that meeting that I talked about earlier, where I've kind of penned out what they want. They want a pool, they want a cabana, they want new fencing, they want nice planting, irrigation, lighting. When I get back to the budget conversation, I already know loosely what they want. So if I have my nice little piece of branded graph paper with those bullet points written down, all I need to do next is give them a budget range. If I'm sitting down with them and I say, based on everything we talked about and what we looked at in the backyard, I really think that we're probably in the 150 range. Is that something you're comfortable with? If they say yes, I just sold the backyard. I got the deal. That's all I needed. The deal is mine. And by the way, if they said yes to 150, they've got 2 or 250, because nobody spends their last 150 on landscaping. Transparent pricing will always get you the deals that you want. The more transparent you are, the better. The reason we wrote the estimating software the way we did was so that we could share our pricing transparently with our customers. That in itself makes you uncommon, by the way. When you send them a quote that's itemized with every detail, that's pretty uncommon. That builds confidence. People instantly feel as though they trust you. The loyalty starts right there. Transparent pricing will change your business. That part of the sales process is incredibly important. Develop these budgets in an open way. Be honest with people. If they say, no, I want this backyard for $80,000, you say, well, absolutely, we can do a backyard for $80,000, but we're gonna have to take something out or phase something in. Just be honest about it. Don't get up and slam your book and leave the table. That's not gonna get you anywhere either, right? Normally, the more open you are and the more willing you are to kind of work through the budget process, the higher the probability to sell goes. Be flexible. You have to be super flexible with your pricing. Not in cutting margin or profit. All you're ever cutting is scope. The more you educate your customer that you're gonna make 10 or 15% profit, no matter what. I'm gonna do your backyard for $200,000 and I'm gonna make 30. That's just the way we do business. Be honest about it. Along the way, I will help you make the decisions to bring it in on the budget that you have, but in any case, I'm gonna make my profit. Nobody that can afford a $100,000 backyard or even a weekly maintenance contract works for free. They don't work for free. They can afford your service. This is a luxury service. Everything we do is a luxury. Remember that and be honest with people. Help create budgets, solve a problem, and you'll really build relationships that last. You're giving back something, and that in itself is uncommon. I think the more loyalty you build in this sales process builds this long-term lasting partnership where you can talk honestly, you can be friends with your customers. You can kind of get to the next level, which means your business is always reoccurring. Whether you're all construction, all maintenance, it's reoccurring. Probably the best advice that I ever got from any of my clients was the CEO of Sony Ericsson. He said to me, you know what's wrong with your business? It's not reoccurring. And I thought about it a bit. I was doing maybe 3 or 4 million a year in snow and maintenance. And at the time, maybe 15 on construction. And he said, yeah, it's not reoccurring. You're working really hard. You're always selling work. And this was over beers on his backyard patio when we were done. And I said, well, I got some reoccurring. And he said, no, you don't really. And I thought about that for a long time. The other piece of advice is, he said, if you can make your business reoccurring, if it can be consistent over a long period of time, your life is going to be a lot easier and your business is going to be worth a lot more money. And it kind of resonated with me for a long time. I thought about that conversation over and over. And I never did build a big snow and maintenance division. It was always 15% of our revenue. But what I tried to do is just build reoccurring relationships in my design build business, which is totally possible. It's recurring revenue. The same customers on the list for years, just bringing in more and more work. Yes, there's residential customers. You may not hear from them for a couple of years, but it's amazing how easy it is to build those lasting partnerships, those relationships that just keep generating revenue. So kind of to summarize, when we do a good job at fact-finding, we're creating conversation. The customer's letting their guard down. You're showing that you care. Your target is going to tell you everything that you need to know before you start selling them something or you start educating them in order to sell them something. And ultimately, you're building this confidence and you're showing them that you're detail-oriented when you do a good job at fact-finding. Most salespeople are not good at this. Back to the pickup truck story. When you go in and buy a pickup truck and you tell them what you want, often that sales guy doesn't really ask 5 more questions. The sales guy that I would like would be, and I say, yeah, I want a 3/4 ton 4x4. Oh, okay. Here's your quote. Versus, what are you going to use it for? Do you need a tow package? Do you need it to plow snow? Do you want a spray-in box liner? All these little details. When somebody asks all those questions, I instantly think that they're going to deliver what I want. When they don't ask the questions and I got to keep pushing information at them, I always feel like something's going to slip between the cracks. I think we all feel that way. In this day and age, we're kind of in this consumer age. We're constantly buying. I don't know about you, but when I sit down and I have nothing to do, I log onto the internet and I start buying something. It just seems to be the way it is, right? If I'm not buying, I'm shopping. It just seems like that's the way it is. So the better you are at building confidence and the more detail-oriented you are, I think the more different you appear to be. You're just uncommon at the end of the day. I don't think you're going to be that unique. Explain what's going to be different. Make sure that they get this uncommon feeling when they're sitting with you, because that's going to drive the results. Each customer walks in to a sales meeting with some sort of fear and some desired result. This is big. Everybody's afraid of something. I don't like hiring contractors. I'm like this myself. When I got to put a roof on my house, I cringe at phoning somebody to come over and put a roof on, even if it's someone I know. I just don't like the journey of buying contracting services. As I said earlier, if it's finding a new piece of equipment online, love that experience. It's easy. But if I have to talk to a contractor, I immediately have a fear. It's a pain to me. I don't want to deal with it. And I've done this my whole career, and I don't like it. Imagine a homeowner who doesn't deal with contractors. They're afraid of the process. So you got to unwind that fear. Now, what's the desired result? That's what we're trying to uncover. At the end of the day, if you can eliminate the fear and uncover what they want, it's going to be easy to get deals. That in itself is uncommon. Share your stories. Tell them how you've overcome a similar situation in the past. After they've told you everything you need to know, start to share, start to educate, give them some case studies, talk about things you've done to overcome something similar. I think that's where the confidence comes from. And then the concept of developing loyalty, you're helping them create buying criteria. You're giving them this super transparent proposal with all kinds of options and ways to do business. And you've definitely, I think, made it impossible for the customer to want to go and do business somewhere else once you've kind of gone through this. Flexible business terms, simple contracts, things that people understand. They don't need to take to a lawyer. Follow up and be thankful after you've presented something. 2 days later, follow up. So the uncommon process is really quite simple. We want to identify a process. We want to develop a sales meeting package. We want to create something that we leave behind that makes an impact on the customer that shows that we're different, we're uncommon. We want to follow the process every time. We can't follow it sometimes. We have to follow the process. We have to live by it, whether it's you, the owner, or somebody else, whether you like paperwork or don't like paperwork or don't like follow-ups. You have to create a process, and then you have to stick to it if you want to succeed. You have to track your results. That's why we have the CRM in place. If you're not using it to track, you got to start. And only sell to the people who are buying what you set out to sell at the start of the year. When the phone rings and there's a big opportunity that's adjacent, maybe it's not worth wasting your time on it. You got to make that decision on a case by case, but sell to your target leads. And I think that in itself will differentiate you and help drive that growth in profit, whether it's top line revenue or bottom line profit. A process like this is going to help you drive both or one or the other. And I think you're going to just have a little bit more fun running your business when you feel like you're in control of your sales and your pipeline.